because I don't think we've accomplished anything anybody's really asked for. So my whole point is, when we do this, we're going to affect something else. The ordinance is in place, has been there for a very long time, and we've got one neighborhood dispute that has really come to light tonight. It's a neighborhood dispute that we're trying to regulate with a new ordinance that doesn't do anything for anybody. So I would say, don't fix something that's not broke.
I wasn't part of the discussion, Mr. Taylor, but I did have some others. I asked the gentleman that was the professional, while I think his father was speaking, I asked him if he carried his dog along with him all the time. And he said he did. And I asked him if his dog was ever affected by the fireworks, and he said no, it wasn't. And I guess, each person is different. Sometimes I'd like to have 3 more like me, but I'm sure that wouldn't work. But like each person is different, each animal is probably a little bit different. So if it doesn't affect his dog, it might affect her horse and not affect somebody else's horse. The real issue where we are is, there's a couple of real issues to me, and I'm still a little confused, and I'm not too proud to say I'm not sure I understand the responses that you had that said they like the ordinance as presented, and I'm going to first assume you sent them the latest one, Mr. Garnett?
Mr. Parton's office, I believe, received a request and distributed it. I myself did not distribute the current ordinance.
Okay, so you're in favor of the... You don't know that you have the newest one, so you agreed to an ordinance that you had, but it's not necessarily the newest one. Okay. And that's, okay, so I feel better being confused. If you would pass that to Mr. Garnett, or if we could grab that to make sure you've got the same one. But part of it is, this is still America. You have the right to do what you like on your property. So if we just said it's their property, do what you want to, that's okay. But part of that issue is that you have the right to do what you want to do as long as it doesn't affect someone else. So that's kind of where we are in, as Mr. Seeley described, the neighborhood dispute. The other thing is, we're going to go through all of this, and who's going to enforce this ordinance? Is the sheriff going to send one of his deputies up there? Is Mr. Garnett going to use one of the people that are grant funded that may or may not be here if we don't have a grant funding resolution? That's part of it, and there is a cost to, enforcing this. So we haven't even addressed that. We haven't even touched it. We haven't even talked about it. So that's something else I think we need to talk about a little bit before we say yes or no. And, I guess they're still reviewing it. So that's really, I'm waiting for them to say they think they can live with this. But then again, I'm affecting the whole county on this one issue, and that kind of concerns me. I'd like, and I'm sure the best will remember last year when I was the chairman and they said there was a problem, I fixed it that day. We said, okay, there's going to be no fireworks until we figure out what's going on. Now we've heard from other folks who say they've been doing it for 20 years, and I lost track of the gentleman who provided the fireworks. Oh, okay, there he is in the corner. Yeah, Tony, he provided fireworks, okay? Statute of limitations doesn't apply. But that's really where we are. So I'm really waiting to hear from you if you've got the latest one. That's kind of what you feel. But we got a new chief. Chief, welcome aboard. Can you join Mr. Garnett? Because I want to ask a question about the Chincoteague. You came from that area, right?
Yes, sir.
You can come on up front. We're paying you already. Yeah, you had a whole week's pay already. And this is your first board meeting?
This is first board meeting.
Y'all want to start all over with him, or you want to just let me take care of him? Okay. You came from that area, right?
Correct.
Any problems there?
None.
Okay.
Never a problem with fireworks, and he is correct about the distances and the locations. Our ordinance is very simple. County administrator issues a permit under the fire code. Plain and simple. One line in our ordinance, showed it to the gentleman here who we're speaking.
And that's kind of what we were doing.
That's it. So,
And now we're saying that because the gentleman over here is a professional, he has a higher grade of firework or more powerful fireworks. How would that have applied to you in your previous position?
would not. We don't issue a fireworks permit to someone that is not a professional and does not meet the insurance standards. So they are allowed to shoot up to a 6-inch mortar within the county limits. That's it. So you, as an individual, cannot get fireworks, bring them into the Commonwealth and shoot them. They would be illegal at that point, I do believe.
Right.
So it is only a professionally done show that can exhibit in any county in the Commonwealth. So it's a very simple ordinance because it's covered under many laws. The distances are different.
All right, and that didn't bother me at all. We just needed a break. The reality is, in Caroline, we used to allow, and I guess we still did, private owners. If I went to Joe's fireworks stand, I could shoot off some fireworks in my backyard. But I had to there was an insurance requirement I had to do and something else I had to do, notify neighbors. That you didn't allow where you were before.
Because Joe buying the fireworks in order to buy aerial fireworks, he would have to leave the Commonwealth, buy fireworks, which would be illegal for him to purchase out of state. As soon as he brought them back in the border, those fireworks would be illegal within the Commonwealth. There are certain classes of fireworks that an individual can hold. The ones you're talking about here for displays would be illegal unless you're a licensed pyrotechnician.
Okay.
It's not fireworks, it's not bottle rockets, it's not, you're talking commercial grade pyrotechnics.
Okay.
There are some loopholes that you can buy them if you go out of state. I can give you an example. If I go to Pennsylvania, I can buy fireworks legally in Pennsylvania, although a Pennsylvania resident cannot. As soon as I bring those fireworks back into Virginia, I do believe I'm violating Virginia's laws on fireworks. Although I didn't buy them here, I cannot hold them.
I used to spend a lot of time in Alabama. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
All right, so help me out, please. Your professional opinion. You've been here 7 days, but you've been a fire chief for years. What do you recommend?
I recommend you follow the fire code. Plain and simple. You already have the language in your regular ordinance today that says if you're going to shoot these type of fireworks, that you must be insured, you must be bonded, you must be certified, and go with that. The distances from residential dwellings, is defined in the fire code, if I'm not mistaken. Mark, you reviewed it? The fallouts for the distance. There you go. That's all I would stick with. The fire code is Virginia's code. It identifies fireworks. If you want to be more restrictive, that's your option as a board, as a community. You're getting community input for that. But the Commonwealth has set the standard, and that is the fire code.
You've earned your salary for the night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
I'm through.
Zoning comes with conditions. Now, there are places in the rural preservation area where you can do this. And just like with any special request, the conditions of a particular area oftentimes make that area not suitable. That's why we have special permits, and we don't just make blanket statements that say you can do this in rural preservation or you can't do it in rural preservation. This area is extremely thickly populated with forests, pine tags, and trees. This area has a housing development of 80-some people living in very close proximity to where these fireworks are being shot off. This area has a very narrow, winding road. I feel like if we aren't going to look at the conditions and how a particular area makes something not fitted, then we ought to just get rid of zoning altogether and just let folk do whatever they want to do. As I said before, I can have a nice house in Belmont with 2 acres, but I can't put up a pig pen and raise pigs down there because the zoning does not say that that's an applicable use for that particular property. And I say, if we look at the conditions here, there is historic land in direct close proximity to where this is being done. So I just don't think that we can look at the fire code and just say, well, okay, because there are places that the fire code might allow this type of activity, but because of specific conditions that exist there, it makes that area unsuitable. That's why I feel that way.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you, Chief. You can have a seat.
Thank
My concern is twofold. Number one, I really am disappointed. And I'm going to be quite honest with you, if whoever they put the manure pile next to your driveway, I'm disappointed that that happened, and I'm disappointed in the people that did that. They have complained about you not respecting their property and their rights, and I don't know which neighbor did it. Probably said, your wife probably said, but that was totally disrespectful to you and your rights to use your home. So I think that attitude certainly takes away a lot of what you have talked about and complained about in the past. I'm going to be quite honest about it. The other issue is, I understand Mr. Taylor's discussion about zoning, but this has nothing to do with the zoning. Really and truly has nothing to do with zoning. There's no time when we do a rezoning that we consider whether fireworks can be in that particular zoning district. What I want to look at for the entire county is what is best for the citizens of the county. Mark, if you would come up, please. We've heard a comment been made tonight that there's no difference in this ordinance than the ordinance that we already have in place. Can you share with members of this board and with the public what are the differences between this ordinance that has been presented, and you said, I'm assuming that you have a copy of the latest ordinance that we're talking about tonight, and you have no problem with it. You've supported that. What are the differences between this ordinance that's being proposed tonight and what we have in place today?
And grab the current ordinance. The current existing ordinance contains 4 sections. It's much smaller. It's limited to 1 page. And basically it addresses under a previous section of the state code the authority for the county to issue permits for displays of fireworks. That code section changed as part of a change to the state fire code. The authority is still there, however, there's a difference in the legal code section. Secondly, the existing ordinance refers to a bond amount of $200,000. That is actually increased in a section of the Virginia Code, the Fire Code. So there are 2 administrative differences there between the codes. The other differences, however, are quite significant. Our current code now does not address the number of displays a year. It does not address the times for display. It does not specifically address a time period in which the applicant must make a permit. However, as a standard practice, we encourage a month to allow processing. We've done displays in less time. The current ordinance does not address a duration of a display. The current ordinance does not specifically address the fireworks display shooter to provide evidence of certification that they hold the proper state licenses. as a change to the state laws, regardless of what we adopt. The state laws now require the shooter to be certified at the state level. So any displays going forward, regardless of our changed ordinance, would have to comply with that, and it would be limited to professional displays and professional shooters, and that's a state change. Obviously, there's sections in the proposed ordinance tonight that address additional conditions that may require firefighting equipment, presence of firefighters and law enforcement officers, and the applicant bears the cost. The current ordinance does not address any of those things specifically. There is no provisions in the current ordinance that discuss some of the items listed in Section H, which talk about how a permit could be revoked if there was a condition of drought or if there was a change in severe weather conditions. However, our experience is that the people who shoot fireworks to get the elevation certainly would not shoot in the middle of a windstorm. And of course, our current ordinance does not address in code any fees for an application. We currently do not charge that. And the current code does not address any exemption for displays conducted on or behalf of the county.
So basically, what we have after listening to it is the fact that we have not stopped anyone from having fireworks. Even in this location, they can still have fireworks. I think what we have done is protected the county. I think what we have done is possibly protected the people that want to shoot off the fireworks. And certainly we have put in place a mechanism that will allow the county to recoup some of the cost that it may incur should something happen. We have put a fee in place. And I've heard members of this board, I've heard a lot of members of this board indicate they thought that there should be a user fee, if you will, put in place. And that is part of this ordinance. There's nothing in this ordinance that stops the new settlers or anyone else from having a fireworks display. 4 times a year? Four
Yes, sir.
times a year?
Mhm.
So I'm a little lost at why we are really so opposed to this ordinance change and amendment that we've talked about tonight, because it has nothing to do with stopping people from using their property. It has nothing at all to do with that. He looked at it and he shook his head, yes, he has the latest one. Yes. So I don't understand what we may be concerned about this particular ordinance change. I think the same thing applies, Mr. Taylor, just a minute. The same thing applies as it does today. As far as enforcement of the ordinance, I believe the sheriff's office has been enforcing the ordinance in place. And so he would continue to do that. So I'm a little lost as to why we do not feel like these changes, and I'm not saying all of us feel that way, but I'm saying I don't know why anyone would think that these ordinances are not good for Caroline County and the citizens of the county.
Could I make a motion?
Mr. Taylor, the public hearing is closed, and you can always make a motion. Mr. Garnett, I assume that we are through.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Okay, I would move that we approve the ordinance as presented, if I can get a second.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Underwood, that we approve the ordinance as presented, and I believe the new settlers have indicated they have seen a copy of this ordinance, and they are in support of it as well. Is there discussion among the board on this motion? All right, hearing no discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Division of the board. Mr. Black, how do you vote?
Nay.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
Mr. Thomas?
I'm following the fire chief's recommendation. I vote nay.
And I vote aye. The motion dies for the lack of a majority. 3-3, it's dead. The motion dies, and we will keep the same ordinance in effect that's in effect today. All right?
Can we direct staff to add a user fee to the ordinance we have?
We'd have to come back with another ordinance change amendment.
You just asking them to add a fee?
No, I think, no, we have to do it. We'll do it. We'll do it. All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is proposed amendment of Chapter 80 of the Code of Caroline County purchasing and contracts.
Are we going to do that?
Yeah, we just, they shouldn't take that, should, nobody's not doing it. Linda, she's not here. You taking care of this, Mrs. Hatcher?
Can I do it in 5 words or less?
Please,
Probably.
please.
If you don't, we probably won't listen to you.
You're right.
For what, 5 weeks? You wouldn't go with me, you just laugh at me.
Go ahead.
At our March 6th meeting, I presented the revised purchasing policy and brought up the fact that there was one change in the code that had to be made. This has been properly advertised. And the only change that we are making in the county's code is changing the limit for small purchases from $100 to $1,000, which will allow more efficiencies in purchasing and not be quite so restrictive with all the extra paperwork that's involved with $100 versus $1,000.
Questions board have questions of Mrs. Hatcher? All right, thank you. We will now declare the public hearing open on proposed amendment of Chapter 80 of the Code of Caroline County, purchasing contracts. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this proposed amendment? Is there anyone else who would like to speak, or is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this proposed amendment? Is there anyone who would like to speak on this proposed amendment in favor of or in opposition to? Hearing no comment, the public hearing is declared closed. Has the board wish to dispose of this issue?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept the proposed amendment as presented to the purchasing and contracts ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Thomas. You heard the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay, and the motion is carried. The board will take a 10-minute recess, then we'll come back and finish up.
Thank you, sir.
He needs to turn his mic on. But wait a minute, this is next year's budget, so if we set the tax rate in May, it would be for next year's budget.
It would be for the June.
Yeah, but you have this year's tax rate, correct? We have a tax rate for this budget that runs through 30 June, correct?
Right. It's effective for
But
January
that's
1st.
still effective for January, so it's not going to affect the April tax bills?
It will affect the May, June tax bill. Yes, tax bills.
The bills that are due.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a calendar year. It's a calendar year. Right, January 1 of 2012 is when these tax rates would be in effect.
The budget we built for this year was built on a tax rate that's already set. So that tax rate is what this budget that we're in right now, 2011, 2012 is in force, correct? We don't need to set a tax rate that would go into effect until December. We could set it in April or May, and it would go into effect in the next budget year.
The fact is the fact that the budget is from July 1 to June 30th. No question about the budget. The tax rate is set effective January 1, and it runs through December 31st. Let me finish, Mr. Seeley. The fact is, if you recall all of your budgets in the past, and if you recall all of your tax bills in the past, the June tax bill, the one that's due June the 5th, has always included the first, or the tax rate that went into effect January 1. And you've often heard the board talk in terms of, we get a one-time bump because of this tax rate increase, and that is because you get it in June. That is in this year's budget, fiscal budget, but it is going to impact the next year's fiscal budget. Not calendar budget. I'm sorry?
We do get a bump,
So
yeah.
we do get a bump from this year?
Yes, we'll
If
get a
the
bump.
taxes, right.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Mrs.
But the
Carter?
rate is effective January 1st of 2012, whatever the rate is that we set.
Right.
Whether we decrease it or increase it or whatever, leave it as it is. It is the rate that's effective January 1.
Okay.
Could I answer Ms. Carter?
Yes, please.
Ms. Carter, and I need your help, please help me. Is it at all possible if we did this April 10th, you'd be okay? I know that's kind of tight, but, see, my position is, and I think a lot of board members, we want to try to reduce spending before we look at the tax rate. So if we can reduce spending enough that the tax rate may be less than 4 cents as advertised. And I think we wouldn't have enough time to look at all the spending reductions at one meeting. But if you could do the 10th to, yeah, the meeting is the 3rd.
But we changed it from the
Oh,
10th.
because you're on vacation.
Yes.
Well, how about,
That's spring
but
break.
but if we meet the 3rd and the 5th,
I have a constituent meeting on the 5th.
Look at the calendar.
yeah, but we need to, how are we going to decide by next week
We're not.
to do this?
Well, I think that is the board willing to come together Friday night, work on the budget? We certainly can work on the budget.
This Friday night?
Yep. We can work on the budget Monday night.
Yeah,
Just a second.
I think we need to at least work on the budget for a day before we say this is going to be the tax rate.
I'll agree. And we talked about doing it on Monday night, but if you want to come in on Friday night, we'll work on the budget on Friday night. Are you available is everybody
Either-
available during the day on Friday?
Either one of those would work.
Not during the day.
Either one of those would work. I'm just thinking of
No, we need
what's
to have a
going to
work
give us
session.
the
We talked
best.
about a work session, and we need to have a work session. There's absolutely no question. And I think each board member needs to go through the budget that they have and say, okay, this is where I think that we can make cuts at. And then we come together and we put those cuts together and say, okay, have we been able to come up with enough cuts to reduce the tax increase or eliminate the tax increase? We know we cannot go more than 4 cents because that is what was advertised and we cannot go beyond that. We cannot go beyond the $3.50 that was advertised for the personal property tax rate. And so those are the parameters we have to work with.
But we have $2.69 a penny? $2.69 a penny?
Come on up to, so we can hear you, Ms. Hatcher.
It's $2.69 a penny. However, you only realize about $2.45 a penny
And that's because of the,
because of the reductions for elderly, land use, conservation.
Only other thing. So if we look at the budget as presented, $40 million, and we take $1 million off of that through various cuts or whatever, we've effectively eliminated the 4 cent increase. Or we've made available that 4 cent increase to be used for debt service or something like that. Right? That's not your discussion, that's
well,
our discussion.
I think we have to be, again, listen to what has been said, and people have talked very plainly. In fact, I jotted it down here. A lot of people have supported the fire and rescue. Now, keep in mind that the proposed budget and the proposed increase in the tax rate does not include those 5 positions. So if anybody wants to fight for 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5 of those positions, then we have to come up with the money that's going to offset those positions. Because there's nothing in the budget, because they were never funded by the county budget. They were always funded by the grant that was given.
All right,
200
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Let me just ask you a question.
Go ahead, please.
My phone
We
jumped.
just talked about a freeze on hiring
Yes?
that
Yeah.
we voted, which I said lift the freeze. So is that hiring those 5 positions? Since they're not in our budget, since they are grant funded, the grant goes away. Now we have to fund those. So are we talking out of both sides of our mouth?
The grant runs out September 30th, so they are in the budget for next year for 3 months.
Yeah, but not for the full year.
Not for the full year,
So that's
and the
what-
hiring freeze
so-
was only through June 30th of this year.
But that 240,000 is the other 9 months of them or 12 months of them? Those fire and rescue people? It's 12 months, right?
12 months.
About 12.
So we would do a quarter of the 250, let's say 60 grand, 65,000 is what we have per quarter, so we need 3 times that is almost 200,000, 180 something and change. All right. So that's what we would need, less than a penny of the tax increase would pay for those people for 9 months. Now, nobody knows what happens if we get the grant. If we get the grant, or does it limit our grant position if we're funding those people for 9 months? Does it make it look better if we eliminate those positions? Then we stand a better chance of getting a grant? Or if we fund them, does that?
And I understand what you're saying, Mr. Underwood, is the fact, and you're absolutely correct, that we did talk about a hiring freeze, but as Ms. Hatcher said, it was for this fiscal year. Now, we may very well say that that hiring freeze is going to be extended to next fiscal year as well. That is something the board has to discuss and determine whether it wants to do that.
And Mr. Chairman, also, just for my own edification, we also said that any grant positions, that when the grant ran out, that we would not include it in operating costs. So again, either we're going to take a position and hold, or we're going to move based on the weather. And I think we've made some commitments, and I think we ought to stick to our guns. It's going to be tough. We look around the state, look at our neighboring counties. They've cut some very, some of the same things that we're looking at. There are no cash cows. There are no sacred departments. We're going to look across the board, and I agree with a couple of people tonight that we have to look at reducing budgets first. And I can't even think about tax increase. I think we need to reduce budgets first. That's the first position.
Gotcha. And again, what I would hope we would all do is when we come back together at a work session, whether it be Friday and Monday or Friday, whatever day this board wants to meet, then I would hope we will have those proposed reductions that we feel can be made and not impact the services of the people of Caroline County, wherever it may be. And then we go from that point on. We put all those cuts together and determine what the total amount of cuts it's going to add up to.
I think we can look at the budget. We'll probably find areas in there where we can cut. But the concern I have is the impact that it's going to have on the different departments. And I understand what we're saying about the 5 positions. Maybe we can't do anything about that. I don't know. But when I look at the fact that, we may be talking about certain areas not having coverage, and maybe that's not the case. I don't know. I guess we have to look at it. The only thing about it is, once you set the tax rate, it's too late. You can't do anything about it even if you want to. And that's the concern that I have. Also, in looking at the different budgets, I can sit down and I can take that book and I can look at different departments and I can say, well, okay, I think here's $10,000, here's $20,000. But I don't work in that department. And I don't know what taking $20,000 from that department is going to do. That's the concern that I have. And I mean, we can say, this is what we're going to do. But I can tell you, when people stand up and say, the gentleman talked about his wife with the heart attack. I can't help it. I mean, that concerns me. And I just can't say, they stay funded, grants out, forget about it. I mean,
But
You know, I have an issue with that. And I think everybody else does too, but maybe I don't know, you know.
I think we do. Everybody has a concern. But I would challenge any board member that feels that there's something that needs to be added back into the budget. That is not in the budget. If you can find $257,000 or $200,000, I think it's about 4 years, like $51,000 per person, $51,400 per position. You find that amount of money, then I think, as far as cuts are concerned, then I think the board will look at, hey, how can we offset that? Sharon, if we voted on the 17th of April, would that be enough time, you think? 17th.
You know, and maybe we don't do anything.
You cannot what?
This is refund on next year.
Well, my question is, okay, but if we approve the tax rate on the 17th of April, or the 16th of April, is the board members available on the 16th or 17th of April? 17th, are you available? 17th of April. And we meet on the 17th and vote on the tax rate. So it's something you can work with.
Yes, but they're not going to get out as time as
Well, I understand that.
Friday morning,
Most people cannot wait, you know. I think wait a couple extra days to get the tax bill, probably not. You have to see them when they come in anyway.
Saturday?
I don't think we can hear you very well, Mrs. Carter.
Well, like
You made me come up here, you gotta come up here.
The state requires that you run your book by September of each year.
We were about April 7th.
Our board voted to split the bills.
Yes.
That's why I have to have it now. By law, this bill, by the state, the whole thing is truly not due until December 5. But the board voted many years ago to have twice-a-year billing because of the hardships on the taxpayers to pay it. That's how that comes in.
Absolutely. But so the 17th is a date that she can work with. I understand. So we can meet on the 17th and vote on the tax rate. We can have 2 work sessions if you want to meet on Friday and meet on Monday night. We can have 2 work sessions on the budget.
we just figured we couldn't do
So are you saying Friday during the day, or are you talking about Friday night or Friday?
Whatever Friday doing that is okay with the majority of this board. I'm available,
You said Monday the 2nd?
so you're not available. Now, well, Mr. Pardon, it's going to be tough for him on Friday night, so let's kick Friday night out.
You said Monday the 2nd?
Monday the 2nd, yes. And what, we can also, if the board is an agreement to do this, we can come in at 5 o'clock and have a work session from 5 until 6
On the 3rd?
on the 3rd. If that's okay with the board?
Oh, on the 3rd. So
That's our next board meeting. I'm sorry?
I thought you were talking about the 2nd.
I'm talking about having a meeting on Monday
Monday the
with the
2nd.
2nd.
Okay.
And then come in early on the 3rd and have
budget work
further
session.
discussion on the budget. Is everybody available at 4 o'clock on the 3rd to come in?
I can't make it at 3.
Cannot, can I make it? About 5, okay. Okay, well, okay. All right.
You want me to run up there and pick you up?
5 o'clock on Tuesday the 3rd, we meet.
What time on Monday?
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock on the
Everybody available?
3rd, and what time on the 2nd?
Are you available at 5 o'clock?
Yeah, on the 2nd, yeah, that's
Yeah. And that would give us, we could have 3 or 4 hours to work on, 5 hours to work on the budget that night as well.
5 o'clock. Pittsburgh and Carroll County.
And then the 17th, what time?
Well, 17th, we just be meeting to set the rate. So I would think that'd just be a quick meeting. I mean, just to set the rate, we would have already kind of determined. By
Well,
that
we might
time.
have a little bit more discussion. Because you can just say, blanketly, cut everybody by 5%, and that's $2 million. So but if you said that, you have to say, what does that affect, and what's the result?
That's
So you said,
result.
that's the result, but you may say, okay, you can't cut this one, you can't cut that one, and then that
Well, it's like
$2
Tony-
million
Tony's-
goes down to
Burn down
X
half
amount.
of the building.
Tony Spencer, you can't cut 5% because he's only got one partially funded in his funding. You can't cut, and everything else is grant funded, so you can't cut him 5%.
You can't cut social services
And
like that
social-
either.
No, you
because-
cannot.
On his, you can't cut anything, as a matter
Excuse
of
me?
fact.
Say what?
On Mr. Spencer's, you can't cut anything.
Right.
Yeah, because he's even used
It's
his
either
salary to pay
grant-funded,
for it.
confiscated assets, or comp board.
And I think that, we can say cut 5% across the board, and that includes everybody, because I guess you're looking at $2 million is on the, $80 million budget?
So the $40 million operating part, 5% of that would be $2 million.
Is that 5%? The $40 million, is that strictly on,
Operating.
but that includes schools?
It would, that's why I said you
So-
couldn't cut everything like that.
So you're talking about $550,000 just in schools, is what you're talking about
But
cutting.
you couldn't do that. That's what our point was. You
So-
couldn't necessarily do everybody
So the $2
like
million
that.
is not what you're going to get off a 5% cut. I mean, you're going to get, if you start pulling out all these groups that you cannot,
I was just saying theoretically, that's what we could do, but that would be hard for just those reasons. It makes life a lot easier on one hand, but on the other it makes it harder. So. Well,
all right, so everybody's going to come on Monday night with some proposed cuts, where they are to be,
Monday night, 2nd.
5 o'clock. And then we will schedule, then we will adjourn that meeting. We'll adjourn tonight's meeting until Monday. We will adjourn that meeting until Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And then we will adjourn and just reconvene.
Continue it to the 17th.
Okay.
And Tuesday will be our regular board meeting. So we're
Correct.
going to meet at 5 o'clock.
3 is already.
And then we will need to advertise, if the board is in agreement, we will have a meeting on the 17th
Right.
of April.
Do we have
That's
to
what we'll say.
advertise that? I think we have to advertise that.
We're gonna, not if we
We're gonna-
continue it. Not if we continue it.
I think that it's important that we advertise the
Yeah.
17th meeting because
Just you're
we're
going
going
to
to be
set
setting
the tax rate.
And I think people need to
They
know
need to
that
know that you can
and
do
to
it.
be able to come out and see what's being done.
Can you advertise that in time, Mr. Clark?
Yeah. it's got
Today is
to be
just the 27th of March, yeah, it's got, what, 17, 18 days.
You wanted to run 2 weeks though.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
So that's the budget work session?
Yes, sir.
We're good?
Do we need to go into closed meeting under
Shoot
this
me
last
now.
code here, Mr. Thomas?
Shoot me now, shoot me now, shoot me now. Wait, we're going under number 2, which is legal counsel.
Yes.
I move that this board convene in closed meeting pursuant to the consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff exemption section 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia regarding specific legal matters requiring legal advice regarding certain employee benefits and legal issues related to the administration of the Dawn Library construction contract. That's it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Seeley. You heard the motion to go into closed session. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion is carried, and the board will enter into closed session. Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Seeley, to come out of closed session.
We all look like.
Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Mr. Black, do you certify that you only discuss, or that we only discussed items in closed session that we went in to discuss?
I so certify.
Mr. Taylor? Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley?
I so certify.
Mr. Thomas?
I so certify.
And I so certify as well. Is there a motion? Well, we're going to continue this meeting until the second at 5 o'clock. Before we do that, are there any closing comments? Mr. Black?
None.
Mr. Taylor? Mr. Underwood?
No, sir.
Mr. Seeley?
No, sir.
Mr. Thomas?
No, thank you.
I have none either. The board, the meeting will be continued until...
Motion to continue? So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Underwood, that we continue the meeting to 5 o'clock on April 2nd.
And that'll be here or in one of the side rooms? Okay.
Discussion of the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Good night.